Alright, we're going to try and make a little video here about how to put together a GamePie Advance. And I've got a camera up there and a camera on me, and I have no idea how it will turn out, so let's just hope for the best. So basically, here is the GamePie Advance kit, and it comes without the Raspberry Pi Zero connected, so that's going to be a separate piece. I've already soldered on the header for the GamePie Advance, to connect the Raspberry Pi to the GamePie Advance. So what you'll need to do is just note how that's soldered on. What you don't want to do is solder it on the other way. Soldering it on this way or this way is the same, but if you solder it on the wrong side of the circuit board, that is undesirable because it's really hard to fix. So otherwise, you have your GamePie Advance version 2 motherboard like this. It has this little subboard for the X and the Y buttons, and the speaker obviously hanging off here. And then you also get a little kit of accessories, I guess you can call them. And on top of that, you'll need a shell. This shell is special, I guess, because it comes with glass. This one's plastic, but inside of here, there's actually a glass screen cover. I haven't tried a glass one yet, but I think these ones are supposed to be pretty nice. What else do we need to talk about? What tools you'll need? Well, right now I have a wire cutter, side cutter, whatever you want to call them, an X-Acto knife, and a drill. And we might need a Dremel tool depending on how exact you want to be and how quick you want to be on certain things. I think if you take it slow and use the knife, things should work out pretty well, but we might bring in Dremel at some point. So we're just going to start out and start going on this. My plan, I do need a couple screwdrivers, so I'm going to have to grab those. My plan is to use, where did I put them? I guess they're in here. These 14500 cells. I plan to use these in my build. So you can see they just kind of go in this AA battery compartment. So that's what I plan to do here. To do that, we'll have to cut out a couple little notches. But that'll be pretty easy. The other option is to do it something like this build, where you have these lithium flat packs, and this one has 2 of them in there. And if you can fit 2 of them in here like this, the battery life is a little bit better than these cells. Well, but it's a fair bit more work, and you can see that it doesn't quite close together perfectly. But there's a lot of different kind of these cells, so if, you can find whichever size you like and see about mounting them yourself. These ones are pretty straightforward. One thing I'll note is you want to get real high quality 14500 cells. If you just go on eBay and look for the cheapest ones, they won't last very long. They'll be cheap though. And the other thing that comes in the kit that we won't, that we'll deal with pretty soon here, but not immediately, is the LCD. And one thing to note about the LCD is that it does come with a little screen protector on it, so you want to peel that off when you're ready, but we'll use that as a guide for now, so we won't do that. We'll probably have to take a little break in the action, splice some stuff together here because I didn't grab the screwdrivers, and I'll have to be back and grab those and be right back. So here we go. We're going to need a tri-wing Tri-wing has only 3 wings, sure, and a regular Phillips screwdriver, which has 4. And we're going to start off with our nice yellow shell. We're going to start off by removing this metal plate here, and there's 2 screws, and we'll actually hold on to those screws because we'll use them a little bit later. So that's pretty straightforward. Take those out. And like I said, we won't need this metal anymore, but we will want to set the screws aside because we will use those. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do after we have the metal off is basically cut out both of these walls here and here. So to get a rough cut, I'm going to take the clippers and just cut that wall down. Just take a bunch of passes at that. You can kind of mutilate it here. It doesn't really matter that much until later we'll come back with the X-Acto and smooth it out a little bit. But that's actually pretty good right there. It probably would work. I'll probably take the X-Acto to it a little bit. You do this other wall over here, kind of the same way. Notice that there's a little hole here, but on the back you can put a sticker that'll cover that. And all the shells that I've received so far, the reproduction shells, come with a little reproduction sticker that goes right over that. So we can put that on when we're done if we want to. So I'll just cut this out, cut it down close to the bottom as much as you can. And of course it's up to you how quick and dirty you want to be or how much you want to smooth it up. So we take all that out. And like I said, this came out pretty good here. I'll try to get a little bit of it off before we hit it with the X-Acto, because getting in here with the X-Acto isn't the easiest thing. We will need to also take down this post right here. Technically you can leave a bit of it on. I haven't had great luck with keeping one fin intact while cutting the others off, so the Raspberry Pi will hit this if we leave it on there. So we'll cut most of it off, and so you can kind of see that I cut most of it off and left one fin. We'll see. We might have to just take that fin off. Nothing's really supporting it anymore. But we'll find that out later. I'm gonna just try to cut this stuff down to as close to the bottom as we can. And like I said, that probably would work fine, but I'd prefer to kind of smooth it out. So this is one of the places where you could, if you're good with a Dremel tool, hit it with a Dremel real quick and get it smoothed out. You see I have to kind of work in there with the X-Acto knife, and it's not the easiest thing to get in there with the X-Acto. So my suggestion is to get a nice pair of side cutters, because the nicer they are, the better cut it'll make in the first place, and you won't have to smooth stuff out quite as much. And then I try to get in these little walls right here, and just try to smooth them out too. just to make it look a little bit nicer. Because you actually can kind of see inside of there once it's put together. And yeah. Again, it's up to you though. Alright, so that looks pretty good to me. Again, if depending on how perfectionist you are, you could decide to cut them down a little bit more or not. Now, one thing I will mention here is we will leave this back ridge. I don't know how easy that is to see, but there's this ridge that runs back here. And we're going to leave that on for now. We might need to take it off later. I've kind of had different situations, but what'll happen is the back of these pins that you solder onto your Raspberry Pi can come in contact right there. So then the two options are either to kind of shave that down on the shell, or we can come in and clip these off, just the little nubs there. I've done it both ways, but we'll worry about that later when we put it together. One other thing I know, because I am planning to do the 14500 cells, these battery terminals need to fit in there. And what we're going to do is modify this shell. So instead of having two batteries in series, we're going to have two in parallel. So that means that these little guys that got kind of hooked together are going to have to go in here. And you really can kind of get them in there and kind of wiggle your way in there, but I found that it's a lot easier, a lot less fiddling around if we just cut these bigger. So again, that's one of these mods that's up to you whether you want to cut yours a little bit larger or not. I find that it's a lot easier later on when we're trying to fit the whole thing together to not have to worry about that. And again, how crude you want to be with your cuts is up to you. But this one is going to be obscured by the batteries themselves once the thing's all running, so I think it's not critical to be perfect on this, but I don't want it to be horrible either, so kind of cut it like that. And then we'll do the same on the other side because, again, we're putting two negative battery terminals in there now instead of positive and a negative on the original. So you can see it kind of cuts it out like that. And then I'll just kind of square it up a little bit here because my cut was off to the side. And just square this off a little bit. And I think that's good. Again, what we need to have happen is for these to be able to fit down in there, and that's about right. This one I cut even a little bit longer than it needs to be, which is fine. But one thing you will notice is if you put those in there and drop them in, I don't know how easy it is for you to see this on the screen. Anyway, one of them drops down a lot lower than the other, and that's because they're made to fit a little bit differently. So what we do is we cut these battery terminals down a little bit and kind of angle that off there. So then instead of a rectangle, it's kind of like that triangle pattern. And now it'll fit down in there a lot better. Now they're about the same fit. Okay, and we will need to do a little bit of soldering on that later. I don't know if I'll be able to show you the soldering because I can't bring a soldering iron in this room where I am right now very easily. So we'll forget about that for now. But as far as the back of the shell goes, that should be it for now until we start fitting it together and we see, okay, maybe something's not perfect, but for now I think that's good. Now we can move on to the front of the shell, and it doesn't obviously matter which way, if you do the front first or the back first or what, but try to clean up some of this yellow junk here. Alright, so what we need to do is take this LCD that's bigger than the original and put it in the original shell. So what we're going to have is going to note the orientation, which side I'm putting the ribbon on. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to fit it in there like this. So we're going to leave this wall completely intact and this wall completely intact. We're going to completely take out this wall that's close to the speaker and the A and B buttons. And we're going to have to modify a little bit down on the bottom. Okay? So this is where I really hope that my overhead camera is working well. And you can really see what I'm doing here. Because what I'm going to do is use the LCD itself as a guide and try to fit it right in there. So the first thing you'll notice is that the LCD is a little bit too tall this way. So I'm going to just kind of eyeball it, take the X-Acto and put it right there. And what you'll really notice is that, like I said, I mean, from now on I'm probably not going to talk about this, but I hope the overhead is really able to focus on this. There's just this small wall here, and we're just going to make a vertical cut down there. And just take off this small little wall here. And if you really want to do this well, you probably want a new blade on your hobby knife, your X-Acto knife. This one's pretty good, but the tip isn't the best anymore. So it does help when it's new. It's a lot nicer for your cutting. So if you can see, I took off that little wall there, and we'll hope that this just fits right in there. And it basically does. So kind of come over to the other side, and we could do that right there, but I think I'm going to show you how I take this whole wall off first, because I think things fit down in there a little bit nicer. So I'm going to start at the corner here, and I'm just going to make a cut right perfectly in the corner all the way down. And we're going to make a cut anywhere that there's some kind of supporting wall. So these two on the back side of this wall are kind of supporting this wall that we want to remove. So we make a cut all the way down to the bottom. Oh, wasn't tightened on there real well. You can also, this is probably a good time to make another note, that you can do this with side cutters. And it will work pretty well with the side cutter to cut it all the way, just go all the way down to the floor. Okay. Now, it is worth noting that there's this little guy right here, and we want to leave part of him there. We want to really try not to take him completely off. So you can do this now or you can do this later, but we're going to kind of cut him in half. Because what happens is, maybe I can show you now if it's here. Is this the correct shoulder? No, this is the left shoulder. We want the right shoulder button. Here we go. The right shoulder button is going to go in there like that. And this little leaf spring needs to have something to rest up against. And if that's not there, it'll rest up against the LCD. It's not a huge problem. It just gives it a different feel. All right, so we have cut off here, and now we're going to kind of do the same thing down by the speaker. And we're going to cut off a little bit more around the speaker, but right now we just need to get that wall freed up. All right. So that seems pretty good. And then down here, again, we cut this little wall off. So we're going to cut the wall straight across there and take that off too. And a lot of these you can kind of, again, if I wish this hobby knife was a little bit sharper, it's a lot nicer when it is, but we can just kind of cut the bottom of that wall off there. So that one's gone, and now I'm gonna just take my knife, be kind of slow and careful with this, but just score the bottom of that side wall as many times as you like. I think it works really well if you just keep scoring and scoring, maybe 5 times or so. I didn't really keep track of my count here. And when you think that it's ready, what you can do is just kind of fold it down. Maybe it's not quite ready yet. It's still grabbing along here, so that didn't get cut off completely. But if we kind of fold it down, I think we could have done a better job of scoring it, and also I could have done a better job of cutting it all the way down to the bottom here, because it'll just fold down and that whole thing will just kind of come off. So you got that whole wall we removed. Can you see in there? I don't know. So that's pretty straightforward. And again, you can always come in here and clean this up if you like. And I'm not going to worry about it too much, just if there's something that's really sticking up higher than all the other spots around, like this right there is sticking up a bit. Okay, and then we're going to go back to bring the LCD. Oh, we got this little guy that's kind of half broken off. We're just going to cut this wall back a little bit, because I'll show you why in just a second here. Okay, and then we'll bring the LCD back in and see how it fits. And again, we need to fit down here in this corner and straight across, and we can see that we're hitting in a couple places. This looks like it's pretty darn close. You can see I can wobble it in there, but where the speaker is a little bit in the way. So we're going to take this kind of speaker circle, and we're going to cut that back. Okay, and again, I think I left a little bump here. So we're going to take that bump down. Okay, get those shards out of there. Now I feel like it's probably going to fit in there. So yeah, I think so, except I can see that this corner can go in a bit further than this corner, because I have to take down part of the speaker on this side, or not the speaker, but the speaker shell casing. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. And I feel like it's going to fit pretty well this time. So it feels like it's down in there. It's just a little bit friction tight on this side, and it's actually not tight. What's in the way is the peel off screen protector. So I can see that that's what's hitting, and it's not a big deal at all. So it looks like this from the front. Now, one thing I will mention, you have to decide yourself whether you want to take the time to do this or not. If you look closely, there is a raised area around this side and around the bottom. There's a little raised here, raised here. It's not really around the top or the side. So it will be up to you to decide if you wanted to take that whole thing off. Probably do that with the Dremel tools. When I've done it, I've used the Dremel tool and just try to shave it down. Or you can build something up on this side. Maybe you take some double stick tape or something, or just leave it as it is. And actually I've had pretty good success just leaving it on there. The main difference is that this corner of the LCD will be very slightly closer to the shell than this corner, and you can kind of see there's a little gap under this side, and there's not a gap right there up in that corner. So it's up to you. I think for the purposes of this build, I'm going to leave it alone, but you could, like I said, take something, a little piece of foam, or the foamy double stick tape, and put it right in there. You could maybe take a piece of something like this and cut just a really small strip and put it up there. Like I said, you could take this one down. I will mention that in this build with these batteries, it's tight enough that you need the extra spacing, and taking that little partial wall down does help give you a little bit more room for your LCD and thus the battery compartment. So that's up to you. So I think that we are done with the LCD modifications, and we are done with the modifications that we did on the back. Now we can try to fit this in here, but we'll usually have to do a couple small mods to get the circuit board to fit in. One of them being usually we have to take a little bit off around where the shoulder buttons go in. So we can tell that pretty easily by just trying to fit this. Oh, I'm sorry, we cannot fit this in here yet because we haven't done the XY button modification. But you can kind of get an idea that that is not going to fit in perfectly. So I have to widen that up just a little bit. It's really simple. Do it with this or do it with the X-Acto, and just take part of that wall off. And on the same thing over here, just take part of that wall off. I'll take the X-Acto and just pop it off there. And over here, and I think that'll be good enough, but we'll have to see. It gets a little fiddly at the end when you're trying to put it together, and then you're trying to look to see what's hitting, and then you do a tiny little mod, and then see if it hits again. And after you do a few of them, it's pretty easy, but the first time you do it, you're probably going to put it together and then take it apart and then put it together and take it apart. Maybe not completely together and apart, but okay, so I guess now we can do the XY buttonholes. And I have not done a ton of these yet, so I don't have a perfect recommended method for that, but I'll show you how it works and we'll see how it goes. In the kit we include this drill guide, so we take that out. And we also want the A and B buttons themselves that came with the shell. So that's those. What we want to do is put A in the A spot and the B in the B spot. So they're in there like that. And then this button guide goes right on top and out. Now be careful that you don't flip it over the other way. Make sure that A is lined up with A and B is lined up with B. Okay. Some people forget that A is on the right and B is on the left, and they assume that it just says AB like you would read. And that's not the case, so be careful because once you cut it, you can't go back. Now this shell, I haven't had this issue before, but this shell looks like it's slightly different than some of the other shells that I've had. And the A button doesn't perfectly fit in there. I don't know why that is, but we're just gonna, I mean it's really close, so we're just gonna widen that hole out just a slight bit. And really this isn't super important to have it perfect, but I feel like we have this guide, we might as well use it, right? And it doesn't have to fit over the buttons. You could come up with a different way to use your guide. But I think this is going to be pretty easy if we just shave it down slowly. And so B fits in there, A doesn't fit for some reason, but if we really wanted to test it, we should fit the B in the B and the A in the A. So A is good, but B just needs to be taken down a little bit. Does that sound like fingernails on a chalkboard? It's not making me crazy yet. Alright, it's really close, and in fact, oh man, I really want to scratch up those buttons, so I'm going to just keep going a little bit more. Alright, I think that's good enough. So again, we'll put A and A and B and B. Let's see how well this works. It might actually be nicer that they're a little bit tight, because it might hold it on there for us. So I don't have a great way to show you this, but maybe they'll, if I push them in there, they'll stay. Nope. So what we have is really hard to do. I'm trying to show it to you guys. So we have something like this, and now notice that there's some wiggle room in there, so you're never going to get it perfect. What you have to do is kind of decide where it kind of rests and where you want it to be. And then I'll take something like this screwdriver. I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully the overhead camera is working really well. And we're just going to make like a little dent in where we want to drill. And I hope that made enough of a dent that we can drill. I'm going to have to do that a little bit more just to make a good starting drill. You could use it if your tip of your X-Acto knife is really sharp, that's good. I found I have pretty good luck if I do it with these, the screwdriver tip. Oh, did you see what I did there? I did exactly what I told you guys not to do. So now my buttonholes are over in the wrong spot. Well, they would have been if I drilled them. When I went to do it again, I went off to this, I flipped it over. Alright, so be careful about that. These have to go right in the right spot. Okay, so if you can see, I accidentally got extra divots over to the right, and that is because this is how it's supposed to be. And I flipped it like this and started to make a thing. So I have little divots in here that I'm not too worried about because I didn't actually drill them, and it's not a big problem. But if you drill them, that's kind of permanent. So we're going to take our drill, and what you really want to do is just go right up to the drill bit that you want to use. And I don't remember offhand which drill bit we want, so I'm just going to compare it to the buttons that need to stick through. You want it to be a little bit bigger than the button, so this one's not good. It looks like we might end up with 9/64, which you can see some telltale signs that this is the last one I used, so it's probably correct. Yeah, that looks good. And every time I've done this, it's needed to widen out a little bit. You don't want to jump up to the next drill bit. I think it's too big. So this is 9/64 that I'm going to use. And I'm just going to drill it in here and hope that I don't go through the table. You have to be really careful with this when you drill these, not just these, but in cutting or drilling on these shells. It's really soft material, so it'll just pull right through. So there's one. And there's the second one. Now we can test to see if this fits right in there. And it looks like my holes are in the right place. And things are going together pretty well here. You just kind of look around and make sure you can kind of see where it's supposed to bottom out. And it's always a little fiddly, like I said, but once it's in there, it will stay pretty nicely. Now, one thing is that this shoulder button was getting caught up a little bit, but just had to push it in the right way. And you want to make sure that your buttons are working well, that you can hear them clicking. So this X button is working pretty well, but I can see that it's touching. This one is the Y button is not working at all. And what that means is that the hole is off to the side a little bit, so it pushes the button over like this, and then the button is always engaged. So we'll have to look at that and try to eyeball it and see if that is in fact the case. Oh yeah, it's way over. And this is what I said. I mean, you got to be really careful when you're drilling these things, because the shell is so soft that the drill bit will just drift on you really easily. So drilling it by hand like this isn't the preferred method. If you have a drill press, that would be way better. So I'm going to try to show you this real quickly, but I don't know that you can see it because it's really kind of tight in there. But when I put it in there, if I get the X and Y buttons in there and then push everything down, I can see that it's really pushing my Y button way over. So I'm going to have to widen that hole out that way. So you could go up to a bigger drill bit, or we can just try to widen out. So this might look really imperfect, and like there's a high margin for error, but I'll show you that there's a way around it. So now you can hear that one's clicking really nicely, and actually the X one has the same problem. And I can see that it has the same problem now. Let me do the same thing there. Just widen it. What I'm doing is I'm drilling it and I'm pulling down, putting down pressure on it. You don't have to do a lot. Don't have to do a lot because it's so soft, plastic. And then I just use the X-Acto a little bit just to get any of the loose pieces off of there. And if we push it all together, so the button's actuate just fine now, but you can see there's a little bit of extra area around there. So what we have available, you can find these on eBay. You can search for like tactile button caps or something like that. And we've included them in some of the kits as kind of an experiment to see if people use them. And these we had some different colors, so different kits came with different colors, but this kit has blue and green, kind of like you'd see on a Super Nintendo. And what we can do if we want to, I'm not going to do that now, I probably won't do it for this build, but we can use these button caps to kind of not only cover up the whole area that we drilled a little bit too big, but also they kind of look a little bit nicer. So if you look, you can see that this build has the button caps, and this build does not. And I actually think that the button caps look nicer, but I think for the purposes of this video, we will not do the button caps. I can come back and do those later if I like. Okay, so we have those on there, they're working. The shoulder buttons seem good. Everything here is pretty good, except you'll notice that where the micro USB charging port is placed, we need to do a little bit of a mod to the shell to accommodate that. That's pretty simple. We just take that wall down slightly on this side. And kind of eyeball it and make sure that you got enough. Okay, that looks good. But on the back side, I have to do a little modification there too. So on the back side, you can kind of do the same thing and just pop it in there and see how it fits. And it's fitting pretty nicely. There's a little hidden right there. So actually on this shell, it seems like these buttons are hitting there. So we just take off those legs. It doesn't matter. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing there, but I'm just taking off some of these legs. I don't need to take off all of them, but it was hitting, I could tell. So now it seems to be a little bit better. And now you can see, if you look at it this way, it's really maybe hard for you to see, but we need to take down this side of the shell just slightly. So what I'll do is I'll use the X-Acto and just on the side of this we'll make a little vertical cut. On the other side we'll make a little vertical cut. You don't have to take down much. But I'll take this out of there and make a cut and make a cut. And just between those cuts, we'll just shave it down. You can see how much I'm shaving it down. I actually probably shaved it down a little bit further than I needed to. And it's probably about good. Yep. It's actually quite close. Just have like a little burr there I'm going to shave off. And that looks pretty good. So, for the most part, that stuff is all working pretty well. And what we're going to do here is connect the Pi. Like I said, you would, as a builder, you would have to solder your header onto that Pi, but I've already done so. And make sure it's pretty fully engaged. And actually, in the kit, there should be, some kits had this, some of them didn't, because we didn't know which ones to use for a while, and then we finally found some suitable standoffs. So we're going to take these standoffs and put them under there, which I should have done before I completely engaged this thing. So I'll take the Pi off most of the way, try to fit these down under there. Oh, I guess I took the Pi off all the way. So put those under there. Put the Pi on. We don't need to screw these standoffs down. The shell will hold it all together. But we do want to make sure that the Pi is fully engaged. You can see though that kind of holds it at an angle, which is okay. I think this will be the right angle. I actually have not made this build with these standoffs yet. So okay, so I've taken the standoffs down, and you can see that the two circuit boards are not fully parallel. I hope you can see that they're at a little bit of an angle to each other. But that's about how we want it to be. That standoff is chosen for its height, so we'll see. And it does seem to be about perfect, actually. And I talked about how the pins on the Pi might hit down here, but from what I can tell, they are not hitting, which is exactly what we want. There is one spot where they're hitting, maybe? Maybe two spots where they're engaging a little prematurely. Maybe not. I feel like I'm rambling, but a lot of this kind of comes down to looking and checking and looking some more. And it does feel like there is a high point somewhere that's touching. And it could be on there. So we could take that down, or we could snip these. But actually, for right now, I'm not going to worry about it. I do see one little high point, and instead of snipping them all off, snip this one. There's one that had much more of a solder blob than the other ones, and that seems to have done it actually. So this is all going together very nicely. I'm trying to think what we need to do here first, and the main thing that we need to do is solder on these battery tabs because I've chosen to use the 14500 cells. So again, we cut one of these down to an angle. I think that one goes there if I remember right, but make sure. So those go in there, and make sure that it sits in there real well. So then what you want to do is make sure that all these holes are kind of lined up in the middle of the holes. So you can see that this one is going to have to be offset a little bit here, and it probably has to do with how we cut that little angle. And this one is a little bit offset too. Not all the shells are quite the same, but this one will be pretty much right in the middle, where this one's going to be offset a little bit. But it's fine, because what we're going to do is we'll just let it sit in there and solder it while it's in place. So I'm going to go do that real quick back at my soldering station, and then I'll be back and show you the result. Alright, the soldering warmed me up. I don't need my hoodie anymore. You can see the result. Hopefully you can see the result. And you can see that the board, the whole thing, just can slide in and out of there really nicely now. We will have to do one more solder. We will have to add a wire. We usually pop a wire in the kits. We'll have to add a wire to go from what is now this entire terminal being positive, and have to run that over to the positive over here on the board, but we'll do that a bit later, because now what we want to do is put the whole front of this whole thing together. And I find that it's a lot nicer. I didn't grab one, but it's a lot nicer if we have something to prop this up. So we're going to actually use hopefully this will work well. We're going to use this other Game Boy Advance just to kind of prop it up off the table. Otherwise the buttons are being held off of the airways. So really what we're going to do is put it together like that, and everything's going to kind of pop into place. Now I can tell, I think I mentioned it before, I can tell that this shoulder button is making just a little early contact, and because the one side is, I'll probably do both sides just to make my life easier. Seems in general nicer to have a little bit of extra wiggle room when we're putting these together. So the big thing is that the X and the Y, if you're using the X and the Y buttons, that they fit through real nicely. Then everything else kind of pops into place. So that feels really good. It's going pretty well here. I do notice that on this one, these battery terminals are sticking up quite a bit, and I'm not even convinced they're going to be a problem, but I'm just going to take them off, because anytime there's things that make contact before other things, it just adds to the getting in the way, I guess. So drop in B and A buttons. We will, where's everything else we need? The silicone pads. This is important that you make sure you get a kit with these silicone pads. If you don't, you have to buy them separately. because our kit does not come with them. These shells are kind of made as retrofit, replacement shells for actual console. So sometimes they assume that you would have the rubbers, silicone rubbers from the original console. So we pop these on there, kind of push that all into place, make sure it's sitting nicely. Drop in the start and select. And it seems to be sitting pretty nicely. Everything seems to be pretty good there. One thing we need to do, we don't have to do this immediately, but we're going to have to do it at some point, is the original on-off switch was made to be either on or off, but we are replacing it with a momentary button. So we're going to just cut that little nub off there. I don't know, maybe you can see that I cut that off. So that makes it so it'll fit in there and it'll just slide back and forth really easily without, popping into one place and then popping back. So what's next? We're gonna have to attach the LCD. I'll make note right now, when we put the speaker in, we want to put some little padding behind the speaker, and we want to put some little padding behind the LCD. So I am just going to use the padding that came with my LCD cover. So I'm just going to cut a little bit. So we don't want the padding to go where the battery compartment goes because it takes up too much room back there. So we kind of want to make just a little bit of an L-ish shape and then just a small square for here. So the small square, circle, whatever you want to do, is going to be something about like that. That's going to go on the back side of the speaker. And this L shape basically is going to go all up in this area. And let's see. We're just going to kind of eyeball this, and we're going to make it about like that. And I don't know why I said L shape in particular. It can go down around this area, but I think I'm going to leave it out of that area. I'm just going to leave it just like that, actually. And kind of if you push it into the back side of these here, sorry, it goes on this. Oh, that's right, never mind. Kind of push it into there, and those will help it sit. And then we'll actually attach the. This is something that you guys want to really pay attention to because I've had some questions about this. The way that the LCD connects. Hopefully you can see this really well. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to do a separate video on this. But this connector has these little shoulders that can engage or disengage. So we want to open it up so it's completely disengaged. Slide in the ribbon cable. You want to be careful, but you don't have to be like super gentle. Kind of pop it in there with the fingers up, and then we take our thumbnails and close both shoulders, and that's it. It's really simple when you know how to do it, but it's kind of daunting if you've never done one before. Now I'm going to peel this off. We can always clean the LCD later, but I'm going to pull that off for now. And this is probably the part where you're going to have some issues, just because if you haven't done it before, you don't know how it's going to all fit together perfectly. So it pops right in there. The speaker can, I don't know if you can see it under there, but the speaker can kind of just pop right under that ribbon there. And that's, so we have our padding there. We're going to put a piece of padding right behind the speaker. We don't want the speaker vibrating around is really what we don't want. And I guess I left this in. We don't want this in yet. And we're going to just make sure, always just kind of eyeball everything and make sure everything kind of fits nice into place. That's actually really well done there. I mean, usually I have to go back and look at something and figure out, okay, what's hitting, but that went together really nicely. Now, one thing you can note is I put that foam under this whole thing, and there's some foam where the ribbon cable is. I think it's putting a little bit of extra pressure on the ribbon cable. I don't think it's bad, but it does fold the ribbon cable. I don't think that it would cause a problem, but it is folding the ribbon cable a little bit more than I'd like to see. So that's where I said you can make an L shape. So I just kind of marked there so I could see it. So something like that. There's the L shape that I'm talking about, and that'll go up right around the ribbon cable so we don't put pressure on that ribbon cable. Actually, my L, the top of that thing is a little bit too long there too. It's still hitting the ribbon area. And just kind of slide it into place here. Again, this padding it's not critical. It's just, it helps keep the LCD from moving around. It's nice to have everything tight together. Now I feel like something else moved. Oh, I can see that the speaker fell out of place when I did that, which makes sense. And again, it went pretty nice back together. And yeah, now that definitely the ribbon cable is still getting folded, but I feel like it doesn't have as much pressure on it now, so I feel a little bit more comfortable about that. And again, it probably wasn't an actual problem. So we're going to take the two screws that we originally pulled off. Oh, not those ones, these ones. And they have the pointed head. We're going to put one on each side. So one over here. Now anywhere you can see that there's like white circles. The white circles, they're going to have contact points there where the other side of the shell is going to hit. So we're going to put one here. One screw there to hold that down. And then over here, there's actually two spots you can put them. And if you have another screw, it's not a bad idea to put two of them in. And I'm going to choose this because I only have one screw. But if you had another screw that's about the right size, like I said, it's smart to put it in there. And you can see everything kind of goes together nicely, and you maybe just want to get that speaker wire out of the way. The longer the speaker wire is, the easier it is to kind of fit things around and move it around, but the shorter it is, the less wire you have to deal with later, so it's kind of a trade-off. And now it should kind of be all together, and what I would do is just make sure all the buttons seem to feel good. If something's like sticky or something, or not pushing nicely, then you probably have something that's not fit together perfect. Also, I can see, no, never mind. I thought that this screw wasn't screwed down all the way, but I think it is. Okay, so it's, I think it's good here. There's a little bit of pressure because of that foam, but that's what we want. We want a little bit of pressure, so when we put it together, it's holding the screen nice and tight there. Again, if you really wanted to, you could take that stuff down, but that's not my intention at the moment. Later, we'll put the screen cover on there so we can take a nice cloth and clean that later, but for now. Oh, and here's a point where I want to say, please don't expect to put it together and then it's perfect, because like almost invariably you have to take it apart and adjust something. So here's a place where I don't have to adjust something, but I forgot to put a piece in. And I know I'm making an instructional video, and making mistakes on an instructional video isn't the most desirable, but that's how it works in the real life. So this is called a light pipe, and it goes up against the LED and brings the light from the LED to where you can see it in the front of the screen, the front of the console. So we got to put that light pipe in there. I forgot to put that in before we screwed it down. And because I forgot that, my X and Y buttons aren't going in as easy as they did before, but I think I got them now. And re-screw this down, and I think it's better now. Seems okay. So now I can see that the light pipe's in there, and it's gonna pull that light from the LED out to the front where we can see it. I also noticed that because of how the shell was made, there's a couple little bumps here that I'm just going to take down so the screen protector sticks on better. I don't want it to be kind of floating in these spots, so I'm just going to do that while I notice it. Alright, so it's all working pretty well, and in fact we could boot it up right now if we wanted to, but I'm going to trust that it's working pretty well. But yeah, mainly because I don't have a cable here, but if we wanted to, we should be able to plug in a cable to the charging port. Hello. Well, it says that my video is taking up all my space on my hard drive here, but that can't be right, so I might have to pause for a second to see if see what the situation is here. Well, hopefully we're still recording, and hopefully this is going pretty well. Let's see. Looks like we're still live, so I'm going to just push through it and hope that I can get done before my hard drive fills up. Alright, so what else do we have to do? We need to put the back of this shell on, and like I said, we need to run a wire from here to there, but since I'm kind of running low on hard drive space, I think that I might not show that step at the moment. So I'll just show you how to get the rest of the shell together. And it should be pretty, I mean, you can put it on there and kind of eyeball everything and make sure, but I can already feel that there is something that's contacting, and I don't know what it is because I haven't really encountered this issue before. Well, maybe it's fine. It just is something that needed to be kind of pressed into place. And actually, I feel like everything's gone pretty well here. Maybe we can just put it all together. So I'll tell you this, but I'm not going to do it in interest of time. This wire, we'll have to go to where it says BT plus, and we want to run it back under here. So it's going to run like this, and then right around here. And what we'll do is we'll make a little bit bigger cut here, and we'll just solder it right there. If you didn't really want to solder, I think that you could kind of press fit it in there somewhere, but I'll solder it a little bit later. And I'm just going to show you how the rest of this goes together. We do need to modify these, and this one I marked up previously to kind of show you where it needs to be marked to be cut. What happens is it'll contact the outside of those buttons because they're not exactly the same buttons that were used on the original console. So it's not a big deal. We just cut those out, both sides. And again, this is another one of those places that's a little bit fiddly. You kind of have to cut it and maybe look at it a little bit and cut it some more, especially if you haven't done it before. But all those little places that I'd marked in black, we're just going to take them off on both shoulder buttons. And what we can do is just pop it in there, so R would obviously go on the right side. And we're going to just kind of feel if it seems like that's engaging the button properly, and it seems like it's fine. So we'll do that on the other side with the other button. Take kind of a little divot out of there, out of each side. wings they come off. Oh, it hit me right in the lip. Maybe you can see that on the video. All right. And that one seems like it's good. Now you can never really tell for sure whether they're good until you get it all put together. But I really think it's going to be fine. So we put these walls on. Oh, that's this guy over here. Because this one has a little cutout for the, like if you wanted a lanyard or whatever. And I think that might be it. We'll put the button on there, the power button. That slides in there. And this little channel needs to go around the actual button itself. Why is that having a problem there? Yeah. And then the biggest thing here is that you get the battery terminals right where they need to be. And you can kind of hold it together with your hands and make sure it seems like these shoulder buttons are engaging properly. And I feel like everything has gone pretty well. There's definitely a little bit of pressure in there somewhere, but I think it's not enough to be worried about because I think it's going to pull together pretty well. So I'm going to try to screw it together, again, somewhat in the interest of running out of time with you guys. So I'm going to take the tri-wing screw, and the short tri-wing screw it's going to go here. And then the other two short screws are regular Phillips, and they're going to go up by where the shoulder buttons hook on. So I heard something kind of pop, and I don't know what. Not sure. So put those in there, and kind of make sure they get all the way tightened down. Again, try the shoulder buttons. That's the biggest thing. If you have a problem, it's probably with the shoulder buttons or sometimes the XY buttons. But everything seems really nice right now. So we'll put in the final screws. There's 4 more tri-wings, I think, on this one. Yeah. And my computer is telling me that my disk is almost full, so I'm really kind of trying to go quick here. The other thing is we want to make sure that the volume knob actuates properly. You will notice that your volume knob is going to be backwards compared to what the case says. The case says volume up is one way, and it's going to be the opposite now, so I apologize about that, but as far as I can tell, there's nothing we can do about that because we can only find one volume knob that works really well for this, and it just happens to be backwards compared to what we need. Oh, well, backwards compared to what the shell says. It doesn't really affect anything. I think when you go to turn your volume up, you'll know right away that you're turning it the wrong way, so I don't think it's a problem. I feel like I'm taking a lot of time just screwing these things in here. All right. I feel like that's really nice. And then the only thing we really need to do is, like I said, hook up that battery cable, but I'm not going to do that on the build. So you'll notice this one fits in really easily. This one, because that is there, that spring that used to be a negative terminal, now is a positive terminal. It makes it so the battery is a little bit hard to push in, but it works really well. You could cut it off if you wanted to. You'd have to build up something there. But anyway, that is the build. And I'm going to go back and solder that wire on and maybe give you a chance to see what it looks like when it boots up, but I'm pretty happy with that. Again, there it is, and ultimately we'll put that on there when I'm fully satisfied that I'm done with it and that the LCD is all cleaned up. Thanks guys, I know that took a little while, but I think it was a pretty successful run through of the build process. Alright, see you later. Alright, I hope that you can hear me okay. I think that maybe the audio isn't going to work as well because I'm not pulling it through my computer, but you can see we have this green wire here. We want it to kind of run up along here and just loop right around. If you make it longer, it's fine, but then you actually have noticed that you have a little bit harder time getting the wire out of the way. So I have that there, and I can see actually the way I did this, it's kind of catching, so I have to push that to the side there a little bit. And it seems like it goes together pretty well, so I'll put all the shoulder buttons and everything back in there. But, well, again, this one we have to ignore. This is backwards now, so pop that in there. Pop that in there. Our battery cover should go on real nice. And we hold this on until the green light comes on. And it should boot up with RetroPie. RetroPie. I don't know if maybe you can't see that real well. There you go. Looks good. It's booting up. And there's all we got. So that's the whole build. You can see it. You charge it there. That one's USB. That one's power for the Raspberry Pi Zero that we shouldn't need, but you can power it straight through there, and then you won't need batteries or anything. It won't charge your batteries that way. And then the HDMI here if you want to hook it up to a TV or whatever. And that is the build, I guess. I'm not going to put the front screen on because I can see that maybe I got some fingerprints on here and I don't have my nice cleaning cloth here with me, but basically to finish it up, well, we don't want that one because that's the cheap plastic one, which is actually just fine. But for this build, I got a glass one just to try it, and so that's going to look something like that. And that'll be it. All right, hopefully that was informative for you guys, and happy building.